Hello, welcome to the Art Ambassador radio program. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about art and artists and how important it is for artists to get their art out into the world. Art brings so much richness to life. For artists, it's the way you express yourselves, and it shows up in as many different forms as there are people. Your deepest thoughts and your feelings are expressed in your art. The colors, shapes, textures, and images that you make and the ideas you present all express your inner feelings and your personal thoughts and ideas. Contemporary art reflects what is going on in the world, what is going on with you, and what is important to you. For the viewer, art helps us get into that feeling state. Art at its best will communicate to other people at that deepest level of connection between human beings, heart to heart. This is very personal. I know, and that's what I appreciated. But with such a personal message, you want it to be accepted and appreciated by other people. I know how challenging that can be, to share your art with the world, to put yourself out there. I really admire artists because you put so much of yourselves into that expression. It's not easy to show that part of yourself to the world, and yet acceptance and recognition is probably the thing that you want most. After that, you want somebody to be so moved by your art that they want to buy it. As exciting and as gratifying as this can be, it can also be really scary and make you anxious. A lot of people struggle with this. When someone looks at your art, you can't help but wonder what their reaction is going to be. If they don't like it, it feels like rejection. It makes you feel like you're standing on pins and needles. Many artists would rather stay in their studio and make their art rather than to face this. It's really uncomfortable. But they also know that without the artist, without the audience or the viewer, without the recognition and the sales, your art isn't complete. It's like you're just talking to yourself. In order to be really successful, artists have to find an audience and reach out to it. This means you have to have some business and public relations skills. You need to be somewhat of an entrepreneur to talk to people, to do the marketing and the sales part, or find a gallery to represent you. Being an artist alone is only one side of the coin. For many artists, it's really unnatural to reach out and be public with your art. Maybe you're an introvert, and it's especially hard for you. In order to get through this, you might have to learn a different way of going about things in order to be successful, maybe even a different way of thinking. But it's really important to learn this, and it's something you can learn. I have two guests on the show today who have learned how to be more entrepreneurial, and we'll be hearing their stories in just a few minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if my talking about the business side of art makes you and the audience feel anxious. Just my talking about it. I understand that aspect of being a creative person. Business is usually a big unknown, and if you had a choice, you wouldn't even go there. My feeling and my hope is that you can put your creativity into the business side of yourself and make it be more lively, more fun, more creative. I've worked with a lot of artists who struggle with this part of being an artist. It's become my personal mission to help make it easier for artists to get beyond this. My goal is to help artists replace the struggle with clear solutions that bring about the success that you want. I want you to replace that struggle with a sense of joy and possibility. Success usually means different things to different people, but I've found that most artists want three specific things. Number one, they want to be better known for their art. Two, you want to make more sales. And three, you possibly want to find someone to represent you, like a gallery or an art consultant. I've worked with a lot of artists over the years in many capacities, from a gallery owner to an artist coach, which is what I'm doing now. I've helped build the careers of a lot of artists. I know from experience that there are ways to do things that lead to success, and there are also things that will lead you to sabotage yourself and miss out on opportunities if you're not really fully aware of these distinctions. And understanding these distinctions can bring the results that you want to get. I've written about this in my book, 9 Steps to Artistic Freedom, Living the Artist's Life and Making It Sustainable. I teach the steps on my online coaching program for artists called the Yes Program. Today on The Art Ambassador, we're going to talk with 2 artists, Jill Ewald and Bob Armstrong, who have gone through the Yes Program with me. We'll find out from them how it has completely turned around their lives, in a good way, in a way that they've wanted to. They have gone from struggling with their art practice to becoming confident artists who regularly show and sell their art. Jill Ewald and Bob Armstrong are the ideal kind of artists I like to work with. Recognizing that they're struggling and wanting more, they were open to getting some expert guidance. They also showed a willingness to stretch themselves and to grow and to make some changes, things that would get them the results that they wanted. They could be just like you. Artists who enroll in the Yes Program tend to be mid-career artists who've been making art for most of their lives, but for whatever reason, haven't achieved the success that they want. They look around and see that other artists have been able to do it, and they wonder why they don't seem to get the attention they deserve. They aspire to more, and something tells them that they can have it. These are artists like Jennifer, who spent a lot of time and effort putting together the work for her last show. She was really excited about her ideas and spent so much time getting it right that she never got around to doing any marketing. And it was at the last minute that she realized what she had neglected to do. And unfortunately, hardly anyone showed up for the opening. Worse than that, nothing sold. After the show, she became demoralized and went into a funk and couldn't get back into the studio for months. Another artist, Allison, loved fabrics, weaving, thread, and macrame, and worked in all those different materials. Her challenge was that she never finished enough work in one direction to really develop a following or a regular outlet. Her studio was a jumble, and so was her career. The art world today has many options for artists, and I'll tell you more about how the Yes Program will help solve these issues. You can find out at artambassador.net website, and I'll tell you more at the end of the show. First, we're going to meet Jill Ewald, and after the break, tell you more about her and hear her story. This is your host, Gwenda Joyce. I'm the Art Ambassador, and we're coming to you from BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Art Ambassador. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and this is the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Our first guest today is Jill Ewald from Northfield, Minnesota. I'm very pleased to have Jill on the program. She's a former director of the museum at St. Olaf College until she retired from that job a few years ago. Jill is a lifelong artist whose abstract paintings have to do with mapping, tracing the line of human connections to the self, to others, and to the natural world. She uses a lot of different materials, from thread, ink, and graphite to drawing. And these pathways show up through abstract landscapes, waterscapes, and mindscapes. In so doing, Jill hopes to bring the viewer closer to his or her own memories, experiences, and curiosities, to wander those paths and perhaps find his or her own destination. I love that description, and I'm so pleased to have Jill with us here today. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you, Gwenda. I'm very pleased to be here with you today.
I'd like to start by asking you to give me a brief overview of your art career, starting with when you first began showing your art.
Okay, that goes back quite a long way. When I first started showing seriously, I would say in the late 80s. Even while I was working part-time and going to school to get my MFA, I was working and showing a little bit, but I got into a more demanding job, the job as the museum director, had grandchildren, and then ultimately aging parent care. So while I never stopped making art, I did take probably a 10 or more years between being involved in the art scene and showing my work quite regularly to not doing very much, and to ultimately led to the YES program.
Yes, and when we first spoke about the YES program, you had kind of been out of showing your art regularly for a while and wanted to get back into it. What impressed you about the YES program and made you want to sign on?
Oh, gosh. Well, I would say our first telephone conversation, when you talked about what you were doing, what the program was about, and I saw the success of a friend of mine who went through that program. And as we were talking about it, you talked in specifics. You broke the process down into manageable chunks, and I think that really is what I needed to have right then. I felt a little bit overwhelmed, and fearful of getting back into a place where I had been, although even not to the point that I would still like to be. So I guess that's what impressed me, just the way you approach the breaking down of steps, really, and the idea that I could actually do this.
Yes, I really believed you could do it, and we'll find out more about how you actually did affect you in such a good way. But tell me, as you were going through the YES program, do you recall having any personal breakthroughs or some specific things that helped you?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm trying to think if it was right off the bat or as we were talking about it, but as my breakthroughs through the program were, to me, pretty major breakthroughs. I was always been an introvert, and talking about my art, talking about myself was really difficult. And through the program, one of our assignments was to write a short statement, sort of an elevator speech, if you will, about our artwork. And it was surprisingly difficult and took a long time, but it clarified everything I was doing. And when I sort of memorized it, it was short enough to memorize, so I became comfortable talking about my work. If someone would say, "What do you do?" I would always say, "Oh, well, I'm an artist," and it would sort of a deadener conversation stopper. Not that, and I found people were engaged and interested in what I said, and so it was a conversation starter. So that was a major breakthrough for me, comfortable with talking about my art. And the other thing was...
That's so great that worked for you. It's something that so many artists do have struggle with, and I'm glad that you were able to engage people in conversation about your art, and I bet you're really enjoying that.
I am. I'm very much enjoying it. I'm not sitting back while everyone else talks about things anymore, but it's I have something to say too. You
absolutely do. You absolutely do. Was there something else that affected you right off that you can recall and share with us?
There are probably a couple more things, and one was that I had a serious time management problem. And I think with all the things I was involved in, grandchildren and parents, and just involvement in my community, that everything else seemed to take precedence over my studio. And one of our homework assignments, as you know, was to make a calendar where I put studio time on my calendar. It had always been sort of after everything else, where could I fit it in? So that was a huge breakthrough. Every day had my day schedule in it, and the first thing I would put in would be studio. And I'm pretty much, I still do that. And it's even though it can be a little bit more flexible, I'm in my studio a lot more. And that third thing I think was fear, like so many artists, of approaching galleries, approaching others, and then it was the short statement and the time management, that I felt prepared. So even though I would say I didn't leap at the opportunity, I did go for the opportunity, and I was able to overcome my fears and do that. So I'd say those are three major things, and a lot more.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that those things came up for you as they come up for many artists, and that they were resolved in the YES program. We're going to talk more about how this turned into some more good progress for you, and how the business of art isn't as intimidating as it used to be. We're here with Jill Ewald. We'll be right back. We're the Art Ambassador program. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. It's the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're talking today with Jill Ewald, an artist who I have worked with in the YES program. And Jill, I'm interested in knowing next about how you were able to move forward with your goal of finding gallery representation. I know it was something that you had felt anxious about before you started the program, and you had some success right away. Tell us about that.
Yes, I did. I was on a vacation, actually, on my anniversary, and my husband and I stopped into a gallery because a friend of mine was showing there, was represented there. And as I walked in and walked around, I thought, my work could fit in here. So after looking around, I found the gallery owner, and sort of just mentioned to her that I thought that, and she said she was really busy, but she wanted to see my work if I had any of it, and just a quick statement about what it was about. So again, my short statement, and I showed her some images that I had just on my phone, and she looked at them, at a few, and she said, "Well, send me some of your pieces. Send me 3 or 4 pieces, and I'll see." So I did, and I've been with her. She's had a little bit of success with sales, not tons, but it's just been starting really, and she wants me to continue with her. So I've felt pretty good about that.
That's really wonderful. And I know when you came back from your vacation and told us that story, it really made you feel validated. It really made you feel like you were back on track. Can you tell us how that might have affected you?
Well, I think it gave me confidence, actually. And it also spurred me to work more, because I'd like to get more gallery representation, and maybe even on my travels, to talk to other galleries. I go into a lot of galleries and I talk to a lot of people, but that's the only one that's really resulted so quickly, or resulted in something to this point. But yeah, it's just, I think I came back with renewed energy to work in my studio more, and with, of course, in my mind, I was going to have a plethora of galleries wanting my work, and I would need to work a lot in order to have enough for that. And shows, which I've been pretty successful getting shows as a result of this program also. So all these things are kind of happening to me now. I have quite a few shows lined up, and I actually applied for and got a grant as an established artist, which was pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. And some of the feedback that I got from the readers of the grant was that the grant application is that I was very articulate about my artwork, and I have to attribute that to the YES program and to thinking a lot more clearly and concisely about what I'm doing and what I'm about. So anyway, that's been very exciting.
Yes, as I recall, you also worked on some of the foundational elements that I asked you to go back and redefine your purpose and some of the ideas that are really core to your work. Do you think that was important for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that also fell into the time management. It fell into when I'm in the studio, I actually can't say them right now, and I don't have them in front of me, but I read my mission and my purpose statement in my studio, which I put up in my studio, which helps me kind of, but this is what I'm all about. This is what my work is all about. And it's
a reminder then. It's a reminder then of the ideas and the things that you're really focused on in your work, and you can keep coming back to them. Is that how it helps you?
Yes, it helps me, and it also helps with priorities. So if I'm kind of sliding or going back into, I think I'll take on this project, then I will read that and I'll say, no, I'm not going to. That does not fit within what I need to do. That's just will be more, take more time away from what I'm really about. So yes, they help a lot.
Well, learning to say no is a really important thing. I think with so many opportunities and so many demands that we all have on our lives. And as I say, when we're saying no, we're actually saying yes to the things that we want to accomplish. And so you've obviously learned a good lesson, and it's serving you well. Tell us about what you would like for your next step, Jill. Do you have some ideas and thoughts in mind?
I do, actually. I do. I want to expand the region where I show, and that's going to take right now more applications, getting my work into shows that are around a little bit more around the country.
Good for you.
But now I need to focus on that a little bit more. And I did have kind of an exciting thing happen. Actually, gallery owner just talking about art in particular, and I've known this person for quite a few years, but as we were talking about my art, and she said she wanted to see my work, have me come and discuss it. So I'm excited about that, and that hasn't happened yet, but it will. I'm not sure if it will before the beginning of the year, but it will pretty soon. So that is also an exciting thing. And that's
Isn't it nice to have someone ask you to see your work when you don't have to go out and make your submissions? Sounds like you're really doing a lot to get your work known, and you're continuing that involvement in such a good way. Would you say this is quite different than how it was a year and a half ago?
Oh, it's remarkably different. It really is remarkably different. And I was kind of like an example you gave in your introduction about the person who put the work together and had the show but didn't tell anybody. So I haven't had that happen to me, but now it's how important that is, and yes, the web, and that you've encouraged the web page and my newsletters that are going out and these kinds of things that I never would have taken the time to do. And even now I think, I don't want to do that. And then I do. I sit down and I do, and it pays off very well. a good.
Oh, I'm
really
so glad
important.
that you do. I mean, we live far away, and it helps me stay in touch with what you're doing. Jill, tell us, if you will, your website and your gallery where we can find more work from you, and then we'll be taking a break.
Yes, my webpage is jillewald.com without a dot in between, just jillewald.com. And the gallery is woodwalkgallery.com.
Well, Jill, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. It's a pleasure to have you tell us the highlights of how your art career has turned around in the last year and a half. We're going to take a break right now, and we'll be back with Bob Armstrong, our next artist. This is the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. My second artist today, who I'm very pleased to be talking with, is named Bob Armstrong. Bob was born and raised in San Francisco and has lived there his entire life. He's very conscious of the environment, like many people in California, and makes regular trips to the national and state parks throughout the West. His art celebrates this beautiful world through hand carving on wood panels because, in his mind, this organic material transports us directly into nature. It allows him to play with three elements: pattern, texture, and color. In his art, Bob's emphasizing the importance of the most pressing issue today, preserving and enhancing our natural environment. In the last 2 years, Bob has gone from making inconsistent sales in his career to regular sales in art fairs, open studios, and is now represented by 2 galleries. I'm pleased to have him on the program. Welcome, Bob.
How are you, Gwenda?
Doing great. So glad to catch up with you. I'd like to start by having you give me a brief overview of your art career, starting back when you first began showing your art.
I first began showing my art seriously in the mid-'90s, even though I had been practicing art for about 10 or so years before that. I joined a group called the Artists Guild of San Francisco, which is an outdoor exhibiting group showing in the parks and public squares here, and I have continued with that to this day.
You and I first talked about 2 years ago about having you take the Yes coaching program for artists. Do you recall what it was that made you sign on, and what you were struggling with and what you were looking for?
Yeah, although I did and do very much enjoy those outdoor art shows, I felt that it was time to make a concerted effort in finding representation for my work in galleries. And I thought that your description of your course was such that it would really be a benefit to me, and I believe it was.
Well, fantastic. I'm so glad it was. Can you recall what was really helpful about the program? Did you have any personal breakthroughs, or were they more subtle changes over time?
I think they were a little bit more subtle, but one of the things that you were helpful with is insisting on a high degree of organization and commitment to the idea of representation, working on everything from artist statements to calendaring time when you will contact galleries to actually contacting galleries and how one would go about that. So that I found to be very helpful when I did indeed take that step.
Well, as I recall also, there was some resistance on your part. And I'm not sure if you remember this, but I think that in the beginning, you weren't sure that you really wanted to become more organized and change. Do you remember what this was like, and maybe what was in the way for you that might have been holding you back?
Well, I think that's pretty accurate. It's very easy to get stuck into habitual patterns, which more or less work, but which need to be closely examined in order to advance. And so I would say that it had been pretty easy for me just to do these outdoor art shows, since San Francisco has a lovely year-round climate. But to take that next step and to seek somewhat greater recognition was fairly challenging for me, because I was a little bit intimidated by it and needed a boost.
So do you recall how you got that boost and what might have helped spur you on?
Well, your course did look at concrete ways to go about pursuing representation, including looking at websites for different galleries in a given town, how to examine those websites to see if there was work that was in any way similar to mine, or if my work might be a good fit with those galleries. So I did that with a few different towns, cities, and I think it was very instructive how you taught to go about that.
Well, I think you've got some good results actually now. And I'm impressed with how you talk about you have a strategy of selling your art 3 different ways. Can you explain what that is?
Well, yes. I do continue to enjoy showing my work outdoors. It is a way to connect directly with a viewing audience. Whether or not they're going to buy the work, still it's a chance to educate them about my work and why I do that work. But I also greatly enjoy the ArtSpan Open Studio organization and the opportunities it offers for exhibiting here in San Francisco. We just finished our fall open studios at the Hunters Point Shipyard, and fall is under the auspices of ArtSpan. And we get between 5,000 and 8,000 people coming out to the old naval shipyard there, where there are over 200 artist studios. So that is part of my sales strategy, to do that in the fall, and then the shipyard artists themselves set up a spring open studio about 6 months after that. And then my final triumvirate, I suppose, would be gallery representation and putting my work into galleries.
And you have gotten successful results from all those 3 ways of going about it, is what I recall, from doing the selling yourself, the open studios, and having the galleries. So you've really got a program, a system set up for you that will bring in sales and revenue. And I know you told me that showing up and being prepared is what is the basis of that. And I'm really proud of you for showing up. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll find out more about how your career has successfully moved forward. This is Gwenda Joyce. I'm your host of The Art Ambassador on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Art Ambassador. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're talking with Bob Armstrong, an artist from San Francisco who's really made some strides in his career in the last couple of years with the way he puts his work out into the world. Bob, tell us about your gallery representation. I know this was what you wanted to accomplish, and how is that working out for you?
Well, I would say it's working out fairly well. I felt much more prepared to go about the business of speaking with gallery owners after your course. So when a local gallery owner in San Francisco at the Inclusions Gallery reached out to me about a 3-person show, I said that would be great, and I put most of my work in that show with her in June and into July. And subsequent to that, another friend and fellow artist who has a gallery up in Nevada City, Leanne Brook of the Leanne Brook Gallery. I contacted her through Facebook, a Facebook message, and she had known my work and thought that it worked very well with her work, so she invited me to have a show in her gallery in August. So I did so, and I enjoyed both of those experiences. And I have another show coming up in December, January as well here in San Francisco.
Good for you. So that's 2 galleries now, whereas before you had none.
That's correct.
Bob, another change that I think that is occurring with you is that you're much more present on social media, and you have got a strategy for reaching out to build your audience. And as I recall, this was something you didn't have at all when we first got to know each other. How has this development worked for you?
Well, I think it's been very helpful. I believe I could be doing more, but I am approaching it and showing up for it, which again is very important. When I do open studios twice a year, I always make sure to make a event about the open studios on Facebook, and then the days of the event I post on Facebook as well to let friends know that I will be showing. In addition, I've started to use Instagram at the recommendation of yourself and other artist friends as a way of letting people see how my work is progressing. And finally, a very old school way of communicating with people is one that I also enjoy very much, which is sending postcards to people who have signed up on my postcard list. I send about 400 postcards out for my open studios, and many people who don't care to give their home address, I have email addresses for them, so I send out about 1,400 emails as well for those events and these gallery shows I've done too.
Well, that's a really big list, especially compared to what you had just 2 years ago. I don't think you had a list at all, if I recall correctly. So now not only do you have a sizable list, but you're really taking advantage of the different ways of reaching out to the different people on your list through different forms of public relations. So it sounds like you are just doing a great job and a turnaround. And I think that people here would like to hear if you have any suggestions or what you think might be good advice to other artists who may be struggling the way you did. Well,
I would say that the most important thing is always the quality of the artwork. So you have to make sure that that is really of a high standard. Once it is of a high standard, then you can have the confidence to approach whatever organization, whether it be an outdoor exhibiting group, a gallery, or that sort of organization, and ask them to show your work. And then persistence, tenacity, those are very important. It's really important not to let rejections bother you, but to simply go forward. So be prepared with all of the things that you should have, which is a good-sized body of work of very good quality, business cards, postcards, artist statement, resume, and then approach those different venues with the confidence that you should have.
One of the things that I was impressed with what you said to me, Bob, when we were talking in preparation for this interview today was that you have become much more intentional about the way you do things. I think being intentional shows up when you have an understanding of where you want to go with your art career, what you want to do next, and how to get there. And you were saying that in the past, things were much more irregular for you and haphazard. And I think that we're seeing really great results where you're getting consistent sales, you have a system of reaching out to build your audience, and you have different ways of presenting your art. I'm so pleased to be able to talk with you and do this follow-up. And I really wish you the best. If you would, tell us what you have in mind next for where you'd like to go, and also what is your website where we can find more and see your art?
Well, my website is www.bobarmstrongart.com. And the next steps I would like to take would be to reach farther outside the San Francisco area and look at representation in other cities, such as perhaps Los Angeles or Santa Fe, or even places like Aspen, and just to continue to follow up to make sure the work remains of very good quality and to maintain that level of organization and commitment that I've been working on these last couple of years.
I know it will. I know you'll continue. And thank you again for joining us today on The Art Ambassador. We're going to take a short break. We're coming from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Art Ambassador. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Thank you so much to our guests for telling us those great stories of transforming their art careers. I hope they inspired you and the audience to say yes to your art career. You've heard from artists who have turned a corner on their art practice and are no longer struggling. I want to invite you to do the same. I'm starting a new session of the YES program next week on Thursday, November 9th. You can enroll and start to see changes in your art career in as little as 100 days. That means when you start next week, you'll have a whole new outlook on what you do in 2018. That's not very far off. The YES program is an online program open to everyone who has a phone or computer. First, however, I want you to apply. What you'll need to show me is that you're serious. I want to know that you're committed. I'm looking for those of you who are at 10 on the scale of 1 to 10. I want to know that you really want this for yourself and you're willing to do the work it takes. If you can answer these questions for me, then you'll find out that the other systems are easy. We'll set up a time to talk and we'll go from there. To get the application, go to the website artambassador.net and find the apply field. artambassador.net/apply. Now that's not all. For the first 5 people who apply, I'm going to make a special offer of $100 off for the first 5 of you listening to the program today. I'm only announcing it here, so this is for you. I love transformation. I love it when artists who have struggled to get the recognition and sales of their art that they are no longer struggling. I love it when you become confident enough to go after your dreams. This is you in 12 weeks after completing the program. Let me paint you a picture. You've become re-engaged, enlightened, and enthusiastic. You traded in the fear and got excited about putting your creativity to work to take it to the next level. Your vision has expanded. You've become clear and your limitations have fallen away. All you see is possibilities. You're confident and have the ability to open doors that have been closed to you before. You have found gallery representation, new exhibitions, clients, and made sales with grace and ease. You've doubled the number of shows and sales of your art. You've fallen in love with your art again, and you feel authentically like yourself. Once again, I'm giving a gift of $100 off of the price to the first 5 artists who apply and who set up an interview with me. So be sure to go to artambassador.net and apply to get that special discount. Think of this. The real gift is when you start getting recognized for your art, when you start being accepted into shows, making sales, getting your name out there associated with your art, when you get a gallery to represent you. I look forward to that. This is Gwenda Joyce, and I'm your host on the Art Ambassador radio program. I'll be back next week with another stimulating and inspiring show. We'll have more art world people. We'll have artists, gallery owners, and art world professionals here to talk and share their thoughts with you. This is Gwenda Joyce. I'm coming from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.